As you may have noticed, the media industry has taken a huge financial hit in the past decade and even more so in the past 3 to 4 years. This has threatened thousands of educated people's jobs and changed the nature of conversation in our culture. As an attempt to stay alive, many of them have grouped up, pivoted products, and others have unfortunately shriveled away. The way media companies traditionally made money worked like this. 1. They'd play a role of a branded perspective in society, meaning each outlet had a job of announcing and reporting certain kinds of news and information from their point of view: politics, entertainment, sports, beauty, whatever. 2. Consumers would pick a few of these points of view they like and want to stay informed about, and then pay to subscribe to the information in physical form via magazines or newspapers, or electronically via cable plans. 3. These magazines, newspapers, and cable plans would rent out gaps between their branded perspective to companies who wanted ad space so they could attempt to sell things to the consumers who identify with that branded perspective. But once the internet got more popular, it made it so that consumers didn't really have to pay to get this information from them anymore. And even though consumers were fine with this, it caused two huge black holes in this traditional media business model. The first hole was caused because as more and more information started to get democratized and accessible, these ad spaces the media outlets were relying on for money shrunk more and more in value. This made and still makes it harder for them to stay afloat, because many have to seek desperate measures just to get people to pay attention to them, just to sell ads that only get more and more ignored. The second black hole was because since so much of this information was now available online pretty much for free, people stopped paying for it. So the demand on both ends of their business model shrunk drastically. But now there's a third black hole that's attacking media, and very few people are willing to acknowledge it. This third black hole is threatening the only thing these companies still have working for them, which is that branded perspective I mentioned earlier, which is also being disrupted by, guess who? The internet. Let me explain. Since social media has become more popular in the past 3 to 4 years, media companies now compete with the very same people they once sold to. You. Think about it. You, your mom, the New York Times, and the president all have one thing in common. You all use the same exact platforms to cultivate attention and interest, which are the exact things you need to make a media company. So today, traditional media doesn't have nearly as much power over how information is spread as much as social media companies do. Before, there was no free platform for everyone to sign up and potentially cultivate a nation's attention. There were only people who were clever enough to figure out how to sell magazines or launch TV networks. But since everything is on the internet now, that type of cleverness has become obsolete. It's now all become about who can cultivate a branded perspective. And those who do are just as, if not more, powerful than some of the world's biggest, fully staffed media companies. When I use the term branded perspective, what I mean is a point of view that people can identify with. Many meme accounts, influencers, and niche internet brands have figured out how to cultivate as much attention as you'd need to profit from a traditional media business model. But instead of being backed by millions of dollars and a team of writers with journalism degrees, they usually just start with bored people sitting on a couch. This shift in power is epic, because if you really pay attention, you notice that before, upcoming artists and celebrities needed media outlets to become relevant. But now, look closely and you'll see that older media outlets are depending on the relevancy of these artists and celebrities to stay alive. If one individual has the power to make 100,000 or 1,000,000 people tune into a live stream or video, then they technically have as much power as a fully staffed television network. Their access to their followers work as directly as a famous host would have on a TV show. And you see this all the time. Celebrities and politicians break their own news before the news outlets do. They've merely become official reminders to what's already happening online because they just don't have the same access as before to announce it. So to most consumers, the value between the two have become blurred, which now means all three pillars of what was keeping the traditional media company alive are totally dying. So what now? First things first, these outlets need to recognize that the most valuable asset they have is their brand. I repeat, the most valuable asset these outlets have is their brand, the invisible part of their business that people still trust and appreciate, and that can be leveraged. And the reason why I emphasize that is because I think they can do one of two things given the circumstance. One, keep trying to physicalize information like it's 1998 and scramble around making junk content for ad spaces that are just valuable enough for them to keep their head over water. Or two, use the remaining money they've made in the past few decades to expand and leverage their brand power into other product verticals that are actually profitable, like events, classes, or consumer packaged goods. In other words, sell something else. Unfortunately, what stops many of these companies from making the necessary changes to keep them alive is a combination of outdated management, employees with mismatched incentives to the success of the company, and a good old dash of ego. I find the more prestigious the company, the less flexible they are about the reality of the modern economy. They confuse their impressive reputation for a corporate immortality and are polluting the airways of our society as a consequence. Many of these media outlets need an honest but upfront wake-up call. They need to acknowledge the simple logic that you can't keep a business alive by selling something that has no demand.